Hey, we have something a little different for you guys today. We're not going to talk about politics. Instead, it's a conversation about the influence of our mom on our lives in honor of Mother's Day.
Welcome to Lean to the Left, home of no-holds-barred commentary, plus interviews with fascinating people. Some of them top experts, others simply with interesting stories to tell. You'll never know who'll show up at Lean to the Left. Now here's your host, Bob Gaddy.
Our guest is Jackie Tantillo, host of the Should Have Listened to My Mother podcast, which examines who we are because of or in spite of our mother. Jackie's worked in broadcasting as an on-air talent, radio, on-camera talent with commercials and industrials, a national and international voiceover talent, voiceover acting instructor, and producer and production coordinator for over 4 decades. She worked as a stringer for the ABC Rock Network and interviewed many charismatic music icons. Currently, Jackie's enjoying her conversations with her guests from around the world on her podcast. Everyone has stories to tell of their mother, and it's important to reflect on that personal relationship, whether it's good or bad. The youngest of 7 kids, 6 girls and 1 boy, in an Italian-American family. Jackie was born overseas in Rota, Spain, as her father, a civil engineer, managed a large product for the U.S. Navy. Jackie studied at McGill University, Montreal, Canada, and State University of New York at Plattsburgh, where she graduated with a mass media degree. Jackie Tantillo, welcome to the Lean to the Left podcast.
Thank you so much, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Hey, how did you get started in radio? Talk to me about that.
My mother.
Your mother.
Her name is Linda. It really was. We had the radio on all the time.
Yeah.
Whether we were listening at bed at night, she always had talk radio on. We always had either it was music or the opera or top hits. WABC radio was a huge top 10 radio station and the first bringing us all that great music. Or it was talk radio, because she was a talk radio junkie, I guess you could say. And I loved it because as a kid, my imagination could just flourish and create anything and everything.
Mm-hmm. Or
listening to some specific disc jockeys on the air late at night. It just transcends you to another place. I think I visualize it as movies almost. You let your imagination go. So that's where it began. And it turned out my college radio station was 1 floor up in my dorm. So basically, in my second day there, I was at the radio station. And I had never been on the air, so I was really nervous. And I got a friend who found out somehow, someone I just met, said, "You want to be on the air?" I said, "Yes, but I'm scared. I'm too nervous." And he literally sat with me. I don't know how we got a micro. Maybe we were just in the production room.
Yeah.
And he literally held my hand, squeezed my hand, because I didn't know how to use a mic. I didn't know how to do anything. So that was the beginning. It's like taking that leap of faith and jumping off a cliff. And if I hadn't done it, that's all I ever wanted to do, really.
Yeah.
That's not true. But for some reason, I knew that I wanted to do radio when I went to college. So that was something, and I've been able to do it pretty much my whole life.
So it was a leap of faith, jumping off a cliff.
Yeah.
And your mother gave you the courage to do that, did she?
Yeah, she was remarkable. She encouraged all of us to do what we were passionate about. As hard as it was to have all those kids, she really dialed in and she knew who each of us was and what our strengths and weaknesses were, per se. But family always came first. We were always committed to meals. That family was first and foremost. Because they had lived overseas for so long, 5 years or so, when they came back to the States, our dinners were the same. They were relatively late at night. We had a full meal. We sat and had coffee and fruit afterwards and had crazy political discussions, any kind of discussions, art, anything.
Oh, yeah. You could never go out.
We couldn't go out while our friends were calling on the phone. We
Yeah.
couldn't go out because we were still eating dinner all the time.
Oh yeah, I got
We,
it.
we weren't your typical American family because they were adjusting with 7 kids. They were adjusting to my sisters. Their English wasn't really very good anymore, and they had to go into public or private high schools, and they were wearing more European clothing. So it was hard for those my older siblings to adjust. They, I say over and over again, I got so lucky because they broke through all the barriers for me. These are 6 sisters and my one brother. I just listened and I watched
Were
the
you
whole
the
time.
youngest?
I'm the youngest, yeah,
Okay.
and my brother's the second oldest. It's girl, boy, and then girls. But we're still very close. We talk many times a day sometimes, all of us. We're very close. And so, yes, my mom, did she inspire me or influence me getting into radio? Absolutely. It's a funny story because when I got out of college and I started working at different music radio stations and doing a little bit of news, some street reporting and stuff, she said, I want your headshot and I want your demo. And back then it was a cassette. And she mailed it to WABC Radio in New York City. And I said, you're crazy. She sent it to the program director. And it was probably 10 or more years later when I actually got hired to work at WABC Radio. They never connected. We eventually, I think she got a letter back saying, oh, thank you so much for your submission. But I wound up working there for 20 years. So she was really smart and she was on to something. She was really, that's just crazy how that all worked out. But the reason I got that job, not just because I could do voiceovers, because the industry has changed over all these decades,
Right.
it was because I could do the production work as well, which was really important. Then a voice talent, more often than not, would go into a studio and just record. But in TV and radio production, it helped that I knew how to edit and produce everything myself.
Okay.
So that's an additional, and I think that still holds true for today. I think it's to an advantage for anybody to know full spectrum what they're getting into. I think it just gives you a leg up.
Yeah, I see these young kids who are, I call them young kids. they're in their 20s.
Yeah.
Who are reporters for local TV stations, like here in South Carolina. I live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I think it's a starting out point for a lot of these kids that want careers in TV. And so they're always very young, the reporters, the street reporters that these local TV stations hire. And it looks to me like they have to do everything. They show up with the camera on a tripod. They set the camera up. Then they turn around and do the interview.
Yep.
And then they got to get in their car and they got to edit it and get it ready for air, which they do in 20 minutes. And to me, that's just amazing.
It's very different.
Yeah.
It's very different. But you know what? Those younger kids that we talk about, this was their, like, what can I equate it to? A toy or device that we played all the time growing up. This is what they know.
Yeah.
They edit their own videos all the time. Not to say that it's overwhelming and not a lot, because I know that it is. But yeah, I like being on both sides of the microphone. I like to be on both sides of the camera. That way I have a better perspective. For an actor, it's really great to have the experience as a director as well, because it just gives that complete full circle of knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. Your career is like a highlight reel with all the work you've done. Voiceover, talk show host, spokesperson, production coordinator. Now you're doing this Mother's Podcast. Why are you doing this Mother's Podcast?
You know how they say, people say, I woke up in the middle of the night and I got this idea?
Yeah.
That's really what happened.
That happens to me all the time.
I've interviewed so many musicians and celebrities.
Right.
And I was a resident in Saratoga Springs, New York, for
Uh-huh.
concerts. I've interviewed so many people,
Right.
but something about it, it really did come to me in the middle of the night. And
Okay.
moms are human too, and people forget that.
Moms are
And
human too.
it's a pretty big role
Yeah, it is
to
for sure.
fill. And automatically we're on this pedestal where we're supposed to have everything figured out.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I would tell a friend of mine, put the baby books away and just raise your daughter with love. You don't have to, it's not all by the book. The book isn't always going to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's an important story, no matter who you are, a CEO or an assistant or anybody, a farmer, a president. We've all been influenced by our moms. And that's the best part about it, is that our mother, if we had one, right, has played a part in our life. And you choose to use it to your advantage or disadvantage. And what impresses me most, and I hope I'm not jumping ahead to one of your questions, but what impresses me most about moms is that, and about my guests, because if moms don't get it, I think I speak to so many people where they had a horrific childhood, and yet one person or something, some little voice in their head,
Mm-hmm.
or some happenstance or serendipity touched their life, and they were able to see beyond what they had been given.
Mm-hmm.
And that really impresses me, how they decided to make that change. And it's not easy, but how to make that change and become who you want to be. Don't let somebody else steal your light, your inner light.
Okay.
It's pretty great.
How did your mom influence your priorities and what you've done in your life?
In many ways. And as a number of my guests have pointed out, my dad played a huge role in our life as well.
Okay.
But because my podcast is about moms, they were a tag team, the two of them.
Right.
They were great. They were madly in love. And
they must have been. They had 7 kids.
It was pretty crazy. But we were all pretty good. A couple of my sisters eloped. But
wait a minute.
Saved my father.
How old?
On wedding.
How old was your oldest sibling when you were born?
There's about 13 years between the older.
There's
the older 4, and then there's the younger 3. There's a bit gaps here and there. My mom lost a couple of 2 other baby girls.
Oh my goodness!
She lost 2 more girls.
Oh my!
Yeah.
There would have been 9.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
Oh wow!
That'd be great.
How many kids you have?
So, I have 2 boys.
Okay, you have 2 boys.
2 boys.
So you didn't take after your mom in terms of the...
I did not. Let's see, I'm trying to think. My siblings have 2 girls or 3 girls. Not all my siblings have children. Oh, yeah. There's more girls than boys for sure. And now the next generation, my nieces just started having babies, and we have 2 boys now in the family. So that's really fun.
So you have a pretty big family.
It's pretty big. Yeah, it's great. And I grew up in a town with all Irish Catholic, and the Irish Catholic primarily, and everyone had 8, 10, 12, 15 kids. And it's great because all of the siblings matched up in age, so we all known each other through the different age groups. Our religion, our spirituality was very important. And we still carry it whichever way we've gone with it today. It still is a big part of who we are. I have issues with the church that I was following, but I don't want to get into that either.
Sure, I understand. Yeah.
The essence of what my mom taught us was not so much the politics of a church, but the essence of who Jesus was and all that kind. She would go into confession and spend 45 minutes in a discussion with the priest while we were running around the pews of the church. And she's given the priest a hard time because she didn't agree with them. So that's my...
She'd be arguing with the priest in confession?
She was great. And that's how my perspective of religion and faith were formed, based on she stood up for what she believed in. And she She wasn't by the book. She included everyone. It was an inclusive house, and she didn't believe in these rules and regulations. So she voiced her opinion. And when they saw her coming, I think they would run. She would go to mass every morning, all that kind of thing. We went to parochial schools, blah, blah, blah. But so that was significant. She was an artist. She was brilliant. She was reading all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was important for her to be surrounded and have us surrounded by things that were beautiful. And I always stress it's not monetarily, but it had to have peace and beauty in your environment, whether it was just a room of plants or the sun coming in or just the environment. It was very important for it to be calm and peaceful and art. She loved art. She was an artist as well. She designed clothing.
What kind of an artist was she?
She was always studying. She would do still lifes when she was first starting,
Okay.
but she was very free-spirited and open, and they weren't abstracts, but she was always drawing, whether it was her kids. We grew up on the water.
Okay.
So she would draw us in boats or natural settings.
Oh, wow. Do you do that?
Pretty great. I don't. I have chosen to do my artwork using my voice, I guess, my auditory abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone in my family is either an artist, an animator, a designer, a landscape architect, pretty much in the arts.
Okay.
So she's touched all of our lives in so many ways.
So what'd you learn from her that translates into how you treat your own kids?
Oh boy, everything. Family. Family is the most important thing. It's really important. And treat others as you want to be treated. She was always finding somebody who was in need of a little bit of extra cash or something. No matter where she went, she was constantly giving out her little dollars and things
Really?
to people. Oh, she was an empath to grand proportions, and she was multilingual. She spoke English, Spanish, French, Italian, and some Portuguese. So no matter, my parents, because they had lived overseas, they would sometimes go back to Europe during the winter. And she was always meeting people and helping people and giving to people, whether it was giving them rides or giving them food, you know.
You're multilingual too.
I've studied French and Italian. Spanish, she taught us, kept speaking to us in Spanish when we were little, and I've studied it, but then I never get to use it, so it goes to the wayside.
Yeah,
But
I understand.
my ear is pretty good. I can understand it better than I can speak it. So that's another thing that she gave us, was the languages.
Yeah.
So we definitely travel to Europe. That's a big part of our family to do as well. So.
When it came to dealing with your kids when they got into trouble, what lessons did you learn from your mom in terms of how to handle that kind of stuff?
We never got into trouble.
Oh, bullshit. I don't believe 7 kids can grow up in a family and nobody gets into trouble. Now that's bullshit.
They didn't find out about it. You know what? They trusted us. They really trusted us, and they did give us a lot of freedom. So we didn't revolt. And yeah, we got into trouble, but if we got into trouble, they didn't really know about it. We were really good kids. The trust was huge. And we always like, God, I wish they would just yell at us instead of saying how disappointed they were. That was the biggest thing. So in raising our boys, my husband and I, again, are a great team together. I'm very lucky. We're both on the same page morally and socially, and the way we want to discipline. We're both coming from the same place, which is what my parents did.
Okay.
But my dad, if you ever pissed off my dad, yikes. He worked every day, or occasionally he would have to travel for his jobs, running engineering jobs. But I don't. Did we get a smack with a broom or something once, maybe, when she was sweeping the kitchen floor? I don't.
Smack with a broom?
We didn't get hit. We didn't.
Smack with a broom.
Isn't that funny? Maybe you just don't remember.
Did you smack your kids with a broom?
No. I think she was literally sweeping the kitchen floor. And God, we had to clean our house every single weekend, talking from the white molding down to oiling the wood floors. And it would take us all weekend. We'd have the New York Metropolitan Opera on every Saturday on the radio while we're cleaning this house.
Oh, that's Italian
they were
clean.
great.
That's Italian clean. Huh?
Yeah. She wasn't going to do it. She had too much other stuff to do. That's why so many families have a lot of kids. They need them to work the farm or to help with the family business. But we were really good kids. They took us everywhere. We traveled. We would drive to Canada, 9 of us in a station wagon. They brought us to beautiful hotels because they expect that's how we were raised.
You were lucky. You were really lucky. You had a great childhood.
We were so lucky.
Sounds like to me.
I'm telling you.
Wow.
My life has just been, we say it to each other every day. We like pinch ourselves and either text or speaking to our sisters. We have so much and we've had so much. We didn't live extravagantly as kids. We didn't have what everybody else had. We were living a little bit of that a lot of the European effect. So we felt like we just wanted to be American.
Mm-hmm.
But now I don't regret it at all what they did. They really stuck to their principles, and that was huge.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have the cell phones. We didn't have any of that. We had one TV in our house.
Yeah.
And we weren't supposed to watch, but we always would when mom was out.
My mother was very religious. My father, in his younger days, was a minister, a Protestant minister. So I grew up as a preacher's kid.
Wow. Did you run away from it?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And but my mom, she had a tough time. She raised 4 kids, and as a preacher's wife, it was a difficult thing for her. She had difficulty with what she was expected to do, and she had, besides being the goody two shoes wife of the minister of the church, she was also the piano player. She taught Sunday school. She had to do all these things and then come home and prepare food for the family on Sunday. And then there was a Sunday night service in another church because he had 2 churches.
Wow.
So she had it tough, and the 4 of us took advantage of her, I think, a little bit. Yeah.
Where are you in the order?
I'm oldest.
The kid.
I'm the oldest, yeah. And
that's really hard. The spotlight's on you all the time.
Yeah.
You got to make everything got to be right. You got to look right. You got to.
Oh, I remember my brother and I used to have to wear our little white suits every Sunday to go to church, and we had to sit in the very front row. And we were supposed to set the example for the other kids in the church, and we didn't do a very good job of that.
We were terrible in church.
Yeah.
We were laughing all the time.
Yeah.
We would go to mass every morning with her.
Yeah.
And then we
Really?
would even go to Monday night novena. Our friends would come with us because they thought it was so cool. And we'd be giggling and laughing. And she was so immersed in her prayers. She never gave us the evil eye, nothing.
Really?
She just...
I used to have to go to Sunday morning Sunday school, Sunday morning church, Sunday afternoon church, and Sunday night church every week, plus 2 prayer meetings in the middle of the week. And I got to the point where don't talk to me about religion, period.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And there are so many kids that feel that exact same way.
Yeah.
No matter what no matter where, what house of faith you worshipped in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, you know what? I saw that you like to give back. You're involved with a bunch of organizations. You mentored kids. You still mentor kids?
I'm doing more teaching now.
Yeah.
And I'm not right now, no, not mentoring, but I'm always looking for projects. I volunteer with the food pantry and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where a concentration is for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I teach, it's amazing. A lot of young kids want to take voiceover lessons and things like
A
that.
lot of
So
kids
I
want to do
perfectly
what?
fit. A lot of kids like to take voice. They're learning to use their voice,
Okay.
whether they want to do caricature things for video games or whatever.
Okay.
But for 6, 7 years at my boys' elementary school, I was involved with wrangling 600 kids in their annual play. And I
Okay.
worked at the school library. I've done a lot and I will continue. As soon as I find my next project, I'll jump on it. But right now, not working with kids.
Okay. It just occurred to me, you're working with these kids over the. Do you see a sense of hope for the future?
I think about it all the time with my own children and my nieces once removed or whatever that next generation is called. Yeah, I'm an optimist. My glass is definitely half full.
Okay.
So even though there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world, I do. Again, I think it begins with a grounding that they have at home with their family. I think that's really important.
Mhm.
I think that there's obviously issues, mental health issues that are surfacing now. Have they always been there to this extent and we have just ignored it? That's part of the problem. But there is help out there if you want it. And I know that sounds cliche, but parents have to really get to know their kids, is I think one of the biggest issues. You really need to spend time with your children, and that family dinner is one place to start. That's for sure. So,
Well, that seems to be a
you
thing of
know,
the past in so many families, family dinners.
sure. When my younger son was a huge gamer, and he was on the computer for hours and hours and hours. Oh, that was the ongoing thing. He got a partial scholarship to college.
Really? From being a gamer?
Okay, yeah. So it might come back to bite you sometime. We're not that smart all the time. But our thing was you have to have balance in your life.
Yeah.
You've got to, whether you're an adult or a kid.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing. It's so addictive. I don't have a TikTok account or just started watching some reels on Instagram. I've never spent that, and all of a sudden it's 1 a.m. So it's hard for me. It's not hard for me to relate because I totally get it. It's addictive. And my son was also having problems with bullying and he didn't fit in. He wasn't that sports guy. He was very athletic, but that wasn't his calling. And he wasn't socially in with the cool kids that peak in high school. So he connected with kids all over the world, really. And he said he learned, and he said this to Rick, my husband and I, we were driving to Chicago where he went to school, where he's going to school. And he said, I actually figured out how fortunate I am to have a family that I am by meeting the kids that I met, my friends online, and hearing the stories of what their childhood and upbringing has been.
Wow.
But we almost went off the road. We're like, did he just say that to us?
Sure. Yeah.
And we're screaming at him to get off.
Yeah.
But he's actually like a really great therapist for his friends because we wound up going to family therapy for a while because it was just, he was going down a place. He didn't want to leave his room. He didn't want to go to college. Now he's like running the gaming program pretty much at Roosevelt University. He's involved with social media. He has a job. He shoots photography for all the sports for his school. And he found a passion, but a way to turn it around that it's productive and it's more healthy. It can be a rough thing, but we're very lucky. We got very lucky.
Hey, talk to us a little bit about your podcast. Do you want to tell us about maybe a couple of highlights that you've...
I'd love to. Should have listened to my mother. It's a weekly show. You can find it wherever you listen. And basically, are you who you are today because of or in spite of your mother? Mm-hmm. And I interview anybody and everybody, whether you are upper middle class, upper class, lower middle class, and I don't care who you are. If you have a story to share where you had a turning point in your life or your mother influenced you one way or another, to share these stories, I think, is really important. It's our oral history. Native Americans and pioneers, their livelihood, whether it was the Greek mythology, these stories transcended for generations. And I don't think we really take the time to talk about what our parents went through or our grandparents went through. How did they become who they are? How did they give us what they gave us or didn't give us? What was their struggle? I interview anyone from attorneys to artists to therapists to healers to public speakers to sea captains. In my first season, I interviewed a Canadian gentleman who's a sea captain on a lake freighter in Lake Michigan. And he travels back and forth from Montreal to, I guess, to Michigan or maybe Michigan. And what it's like out at sea for months at a time and calling his mom on the radio.
I wondered where the mom came in on that story.
Yeah. And yeah, she was a wonderful woman. They had nothing. They were from a large family. They lived in this little house, and he actually owns the house that he grew up in. And he would call her on the radio, I think, like every day just to talk to her, let her know that he was okay. And the stories go on and on. Either she's that rock that you needed, or she was a complete mess, abusive. I've had parents that have put their kids out for sex slaving. You can't believe the stories that are out there. But again, I'll say that it's remarkable how people can turn their life around.
What can people learn by listening to your podcast, Jackie?
It's a lot about humanity and accepting. It's hard because as your mom, you don't think that she's allowed to make mistakes. And often I hear she did the best that she could with what she had. So what preceded her, they passed down. And sometimes that gets me really mad because I don't think any child should be subject to abuse or neglect of any kind. Yeah. But people are amazing. They're resilient. They can overcome anything. And that's where the optimism comes in for the younger generation. That these people you can change your life.
Okay.
You can.
Now, next Sunday is Mother's Day, Jackie. What's your message for all the moms out there and for those who plan to honor their mothers?
Regardless of what anyone in your family will do for you or not do for you, you need to take the time to celebrate yourself and to love yourselves. I'm constantly working on loving myself more instead of prioritizing everybody else. But I think moms have to love themselves. If they get disappointed that they didn't get the gift they wanted on Mother's Day, it won't matter, because if you've taken the time to love yourself already, you've given yourself that biggest gift. Okay. I think that's really important, to take the time to love ourselves.
Okay. Listen, thank you so much for being with us. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Jackie?
No, I just want to say how it was a pleasure to meet you and to speak with you and have this wonderful conversation, not just bullet points or one person speaking more than another. I love the fact that it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And
it's fun, isn't it fun?
To know one another. It's fun.
Yeah.
And your imagination, hopefully with stories that we shared today, you can envision the craziness in our house, or I can see you in the front row with your white suit on and your brother nudging your brother and you're trying to fall asleep. My imagination just was so vivid.
I bet you there's one thing you wouldn't imagine, and that would be the two of us sitting in the front row in this little church with all these people. And when the evangelists, my dad used to have these evangelists come every so often, and they would, every night for a week, they would get up and do their hell's fire and damnation preaching. And one night, my brother and I just had it up to here, and we both brought little whistles. And when we thought his time was up, we blew the whistles. And
did you get in trouble?
We got beat. My dad had an army belt, and he liked to use it. Yeah. It was not a good thing to do.
But you probably had fun for that flash second.
We did, but My
Oh
mom
man.
she was not happy either. Yeah. So anyway, listen, thanks again. I really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video and that you learned something as well. Please come back on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that I hope you find interesting, entertaining, and enlightening. And you can check out the schedule of upcoming shows, guests, and topics at podcast.leantotheleft.net. You can also subscribe to our audio version there or to our video shows here at YouTube. And follow us on social media. Facebook at the Lean to the Left Podcast, Twitter at Lean to the Left 1, Instagram at BobGaddy_Lean to the Left, and TikTok at Lean to the Left. Our goal is to be informative and entertaining as we and our guests comment on the latest developments in the news and about the social issues that concern us all. This is Bob Gaddy signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.